I am a zoologist working in a natural history museum, and my job is literally to describe new species. I wanted to give you some of my thoughts on crawlers from a scientific point of view. What first struck me is the consistency of all the descriptions of the animal throughout reported sightings, which contributes to make it credible in my opinion, as well as the restricted geographical distribution of the sightings. They are not seen all over the world, but mostly in North America, which is consistent with a real animal having a natural distribution area. Some on here have found a correlation between the presence of caves and crawler sightings. I find this particularly interesting, since crawlers seem to present most of the characteristics that evolved in cave species, namely, loss of skin pigmentation, elongation of the limbs, reduction or loss of the eyes, slow metabolism due to the lack of food, and nocturnal foraging behavior. From the descriptions, it seems that crawlers are bipedal humanoids, so we can assume that this animal would probably be a primate, except there are no apes or catarrhini in America, as they evolved separately in the Old World, so crawlers would be members of the Platyrrhini, a group comprising all the currently extant American monkeys. Monkeys are now absent from North America, but they used to live there until the end of the Eocene epoch, about 33 million years ago, when climate changes led them to disappear from there and become restricted to tropical areas. But maybe some individuals found refuge or were trapped in cave systems around the time and evolved to become the crawlers. Caves are indeed known to serve as refuge for animal groups that disappeared from the surface. To date, the only vertebrates to have been found living in caves are some fish and a few amphibians. If the existence of a cave-dwelling primate in North America was proven to be true, it would be a huge breakthrough, as the first known cave mammal ever, and two, as the only known primate in North America. Now imagine a hairless and tailless spider monkey, like the one pictured here. Wouldn't it make a convincing crawler? So these are a few of my thoughts. What are yours? This event took place over a year ago. I live in Maryland, and I was with my now ex-girlfriend at her house. It was a rural area surrounded by woods in all directions. It was at night, and we were going to visit her grandparents' house a short drive away. We got into her car, and while she was fiddling with her phone and the aux cord, I saw something in the brush illuminated by the headlights. It was tall, pale, gray, thin, with a gaunt face and stretched limbs. I don't think it stood to a standard 8 feet of a crawler, but my lack of depth perception makes it hard to accurately perceive distance and height. All it did was watch, its seemingly hollow eyes fixed to me. It was gone before I could point it out to my girlfriend, and I didn't have the bravery or stupidity to investigate. I wish I had a concrete evidence of what I saw, but all I have is my word and a terrifying memory. I lived in Montana on some land my dad owns. I was hiking up a mountain like most days, and I heard this really weird screaming coming from the other side of the mountain, away from my house and deeper into the woods. It wasn't a mountain lion, too deep and long, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't a bear. It kind of sounded like a human, except it was distorted. It sounded like someone was possessed by something, sort of like what you would hear in a horror movie. I got to the top of the mountain, pulled out my binoculars, and looked in the general direction of the scream. I saw a weird humanoid-looking creature. It was as white as paper, didn't have any hair or clothes, and its arms were longer than its body. It also had huge black eyes that covered most of its face. It was walking, but as soon as I saw it, it stopped and stared at me. I watched it carefully. I forget how long, but at least 2 minutes. I remember thinking it's staring straight into my soul. I had to look away because my eyes had started watering from not blinking. When I looked back at it after wiping my eyes, it was gone. I couldn't see it anywhere, which made me think it was a weird hallucination or something. Illusion or not, I decided to get the hell away from the area and ran back home. And the scariest part is that 5 minutes after I walk in the door, I hear the scream again. It was much closer and made my ears ring. Now that I think about it, I remember that I could hear my dad yell at me whenever he needed help with something every other time I was up there. I'm pretty sure it was where I was standing when I first saw it. My dad heard it too, so it wasn't just some hallucination, and my neighbor was talking about the screams a week after it happened. I've researched it as best as I could, but never found anything fitting its exact description. I've never seen it since. My dad hasn't either. It's one of the many reasons I moved in with my mom in Arizona. My friends and I used to camp a lot in the El Dorado National Forest. We had a spot along Sopiago Spring. One weekend, we decided to go for a 3-day foraging camp. We brought MREs in case we couldn't find anything, some guns, and some supplies to set up shelter, but that's about it. First night was chill. We cooked a bunch of crawdads and a squirrel my buddy shot, drank a few beers, and slept fine. The next day, something felt off to me. One of my friends who was with me had some really creepy experiences in this part of the forest in the past, and it felt a bit like those. Forest was dead silent, and you felt like something was watching you. I grew up in the woods, so I know the signs of a predator, but this felt different than a bear or a mountain lion. When night fell, my friends went 200 yards or so up the stream to do some stuff, and I was alone in camp. The feeling got even stronger, so I built up the fire nice and big and grabbed a gun. I kept hearing faint voices from the woods in the opposite direction of where my friends were. They were low, indistinct sounds, but they were creeping me out majorly. And my buddies had taken the only 2 flashlights. As I peered out into the darkness, I caught a glimpse of something moving 50 yards or so out in the trees. I snapped the rifle to my shoulder and got the scope on it. It was pretty dark, and the only light was from the fire, but I could see the outline of what I was aiming at. It looked human, but was on all 4s, and its arms seemed a lot longer than they should. It stood a bit like an ape, but very low to the ground. I only saw it for a second before it loped off deeper into the woods. After I lost track of it, I'd hear light rustling in different directions around the camp. Leaves scuffling, the occasional twig breaking, always away from where my friends went, on the other side of the camp from their departure. I got the sense that whatever it was stalking me. I kept the fire high and was staying sharp looking out into the woods, but I didn't see it again. My buddies came back about 10 minutes later to find me a paranoid wreck glassing the tree line with my scope. I told them what happened, and they got quiet, then told me the reason they came back when they did, is they started hearing the same things I did over by where they were at, and it spooked them. We spent the second night of our trip with a big fire and 3 lookouts. Nobody slept that night. In the morning, we broke camp as quickly as we could, and hightailed out of there. We never camped in that spot again. My parents live on about 30 acres of wooded land in the middle of nowhere. I was in high school at the time and was up late on a weekend. I remember that I had fallen asleep in the recliner in our living room and woke up around 2 a.m. I sat up and watched TV for about a half hour, and then got up to get some water before bed. Our kitchen sink looked out over the backyard, and I could see clear to the tree line because of a lamp on a telephone pole we had installed for security. As I looked out into the yard, I saw something dash across the tree line for about 50 feet before going back into the trees. I can still see it in my mind. It was either white or really pale gray, and it looked like a person moving on all fours. There was no visible fur or clothing. I could tell it was large, at least the size of a person, maybe larger. It covered the 50-foot span in about 5 and 10 seconds. I was absolutely frozen in place for a solid minute after this encounter. My parents kept telling me it was just an albino coyote. I know it wasn't. A few years later, I came across a YouTube video talking about really strange creatures caught on trail cameras. It was one of those low-quality edits that pop up on your recommended videos after a long video binge. Halfway through came an image that made my blood go cold. It was called a rake. This was exactly what I had seen. To this day, I will swear by it, and I saw this creature and still refuse to be outside at night at my parents' house. If anyone has any other thoughts about what it could have been, or a similar experience, I'm open to suggestions. Just wanted to share with some people who would listen. I moved into a new house a few months ago. It's in a normal residential neighborhood in the city, but within a half mile of some backyard woods with deer. My house is off a fairly busy road, and the yard shares a big meadow with other fenced yards, as there's no street parallel right behind ours. Rather, a big triangle of yards with lots of wild birds. One night a couple months in at maybe 10 p.m., I heard this screeching at first. I thought it was a bird, which I had on the brain from rehabbing one in my bathroom the week prior. It was loud and obnoxious, short, repetitive, high-pitched squawking. It seemed like it was coming from the window next to my bed where I sat. And then as I started listening more, it sounded less like a bird to me. After all, coming from the opposite side. Then I thought, the bathroom across the room from my bed. Next, I started hearing banging noises in the bathroom as the squawking continued. It sounded like a raccoon barking, but higher pitched. I could have sworn I saw the bathroom cabinet door shake as it sounded like it was inside the bathroom cabinet, under the sink, and my cat pawed at the baseboard of the cabinet. It also sounded like it was in the shower behind the door, and I was terrified to go in the bathroom. As I called my roommate and calmed down a little, we listened to it for an hour or two below the bathroom floor. It made the coughing, screeching sounds as well as decent like tongue click or lip smack sounds at odd intervals, which were scary, and some heavy breathing sounds. It would jolt around to different parts of the space beneath the bathroom floor, and sometimes it would sound like it was 5 feet away at the bottom of the crawl space. Then it would sound like it was pressing its pale white face against the floor immediately below us, just a second later, and on the other side of the room. We have a rational explanation, as we found a dirt tunnel into the crawl space the size of a large raccoon, but no human, and we also found a chewed through basement window the size of a possum complete with possum. So I think it was a possum, but I'm just nagged by a few creepy details. Over the course of 2 hours, the sound moved from the bottom of the crawl space to the top quickly like a huge animal. It could have just climbed and jumped into the AC tubes real quick, but the crawl space under the house is totally open. No difference between the crawl space under the bathroom and the crawl space under the room or my roomie's room, and no divisions. I don't understand why the animal was fixated on or trapped literally up to the metal bar under the doorframe between the rooms, when I was walking around freely talking to it in both rooms. Could the animal have been planning to eat my pet bird, which was kept in my bathroom, stalking the space under where it heard scared bird sounds? Also, during the whole night, I saw a pale white shape in my glass brick bathroom window. Cheesy, but it looked like a creepy white creature crouching in the window left side facing right. But it went away the next day. The lawn guys came, and at first I thought they decided to cut down a possible pale bush in my window, but there were no stumps. If you could see out the glass brick window properly now, you would see the fence to the yard immediately to the left and bottom of the window, perfect distance to crouch. And below the window, a foot to the right, is the burrow tunnel, which is now filled by concrete. I have been creeped out and somewhat paranoid about locking my door, but I forgot the other night and woke up with 2 itchy puncture-like wounds, 0.2 centimeters big and 1.8 centimeter apart, like in the Nola story. Do you think I can put my fears to rest? Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Perhaps click the bell for notifications, and remember, hell is empty, and the devils are here.